My name is Grace. I'm a 28-year-old fashion designer. After high school, I went on to vocational school and then landed a job at a design company. 2 years ago, I took a leap of faith and became an independent freelance designer. In the beginning, clients were hard to come by, but thankfully, we live in a convenient world nowadays. I designed a few pieces and decided to sell them in an online shop. To my surprise, they sold like hotcakes, and I even partnered up with some companies. Sales are good. I have a younger sister named Ava, who's only a year younger than me. Growing up, Ava was always the smarter one, so she used to look down on me a bit. When I was in first grade, she'd peek over my shoulder while I was studying and say, "What's that?" When I'd tell her it was homework, she'd throw a tantrum, saying, "I want to do it too." My mom had to copy my homework just to get her to quiet down. Initially, Ava enjoyed doing it with my help, but she soon started to finish before me. Even worse, she got better scores. So by the time she hit elementary school, she was outperforming her peers in academics. Our parents were super impressed with her intelligence and got her a private tutor, starting from the first grade. She was encouraged to study everything. I wasn't fond of studying, so I envied how Ava could solve any problem so quickly. As for me, I was drawn to the crafts my mom and dad did as a hobby. So I'd spend time with her making little things, and I became really good with my hands. I was always an average student, grade-wise. Ava would always exclaim cheerfully, "Yay, I beat Grace!" whenever she saw my test scores. I felt belittled by her, even if she didn't mean it in that way, and it would bring me down every time. Despite all this, I still found her adorable when we were in elementary school. But that changed when she hit middle school and started belittling me openly. She'd say things like, "Why are you so stupid compared to me? Mom must have given me all the genius nutrients in the womb." Ava excelled throughout middle school. She aced all her subjects and went on to one of the top private high schools in the city. I maintained average grades and chose a high school with a fashion program. Even when we bumped into each other outside, Ava acted like I was a stranger. Once, she saw me hanging out with my high school friends. She smirked and said, "It's amazing how the school you go to dictates the kind of friends you have. They all look dumb." But I chose that school to follow my dream, so I didn't let her comments bother me. After that, I went on to a vocational school and worked my butt off to become a designer. Meanwhile, Ava's grades had plummeted since she started high school. When she realized she might not get into her dream college, she said, "I can't stand being at this school anymore," and decided on her own to drop out. This happened a few months after she became a high school senior. The school called home, and that's when we found out. Dad, Mom, and I were all caught off guard. The school asked us to hold off on Ava's decision until we had a chance to talk with her. "So why did you decide to quit school?" Mom asked. Ava retorted, "School's boring, okay? Whether I stay or go, it won't make a difference. I don't even have to go to college." Then she dropped a bombshell. "I've met someone I want to marry, so I'm moving out." Turns out she'd fallen for a guy who works at her favorite clothing store. They'd been dating for a while, and he was about to be transferred to another state. He wants to drop out of school to follow his passion, even though he's a high school senior and just 6 months away from graduation. We tried talking to him, but in Ava's mind, the decision is already made. It's like there's no way to change his mind. We told the school and reluctantly gave our consent for her to leave. Later, Ava introduced us to her boyfriend at a family meeting. He was 8 years older than her. At first, we thought it was shady. But love is love. Dad was visibly angry at the guy, but they didn't seem to care. "Next month, we're moving and getting married. We're not having a wedding, so just give us a cash gift," Ava announced. Dad shouted, "Who's paying for that? Get out!" and kicked them both out. We thought they'd ask for money later, but they seemed too caught up in their plans. Eventually, they moved 3 hours away. We lost contact with Ava, but a relative living in her new area said they'd seen her working at a clothing store. She seemed to be doing fine. 6 years later, when I was 25, Dad was rushed to the hospital from work. I left my job early and met Mom at the hospital. Despite calling Ava several times, we couldn't get through to her. Reluctantly, I left a message saying Dad had collapsed and went to his hospital room. Dad was 54 at the time. He was diagnosed with stomach cancer. After some tests, luckily, it seemed there was no spread to other parts of the body, which was a relief. I got a call from Ava on the day of Dad's surgery. Grace, long time no talk. How's Dad doing? Things look bad? She asked cheerfully. Caught off guard, I managed to say, Where were you when Dad needed you? We tried reaching you multiple times. He's fine and about to go into surgery. He'll be in the hospital for a while. You should come visit. I urged Ava to visit Dad and hung up the phone. The surgery was successful. They removed part of his stomach and decided to monitor his progress. Knowing I couldn't leave my emotionally fragile mom alone, I quit my job to work freelance. Being able to work while staying close to Mom and Dad meant the world to me. Though Dad was recovering well, he got sick again 2 years later. By then, the cancer had spread, and he was given a terminal diagnosis. 6 months left. I tried calling Ava right away, but got no answer. So I left her a voicemail and a text message. The next day, she called back to say, Another setback? Just let me know when he's gone. No need to contact me until then. Before hanging up. After that, despite multiple attempts, we lost all contact with Ava. Mom and I struggled with whether to tell Dad about Ava, but it seemed he already knew. In the hospital room, Dad said, I don't think I have much time left. Haven't seen Ava in a while. Guess I won't anymore. He chuckled, but seemed somewhat lonely. Caught off guard again, I couldn't reply. He said, Well, forget about those who won't come. I really wanted to see you in a wedding dress. Any plans? Actually, I am engaged. Due to his work, we planned to marry later, but after hearing about Dad's condition, I decided to introduce him. I actually do have someone. Can I bring him next time? I told my dad. Dad was thrilled. Later, my fiancé and I visited Dad's hospital room. After hearing about Dad, my fiancé proposed we move up the wedding. So we obtained special permission for Dad to leave the hospital. We reserved a venue and had a small ceremony with just the family. Dad was overjoyed and emotionally entrusted me to my fiancé. A few months later, Dad passed away. Just about 2 months after the terminal diagnosis. Mom and I organized the funeral. Of course, we informed Ava, but as usual, we got her voicemail. Left with no other option, we left a message and focused on the preparations. On the day of the funeral, I call Ava again, and this time she picks up. Hello, Ava? Where are you? The wake is today at 6 p.m., I say in a stern tone. Grace, we're not going to the wake or the funeral. Ava replies, as if it's no big deal. What do you mean? Dad specifically asked that you attend his funeral when he gets to heaven. Did he? Well, we took some time off, so we're going on vacation for a week. Ava responds, laughing nonchalantly. I'm speechless at her unexpected words. What did you just say? Listen, there's no gain in going to Dad's funeral. Instead, we're using the time off to go on vacation with my husband. Don't call us until we get back in a week. Are you serious? You're not coming tomorrow either? I just said we're not coming. Stop calling. I decide to let Ava and her husband go. All right, fine. Safe travels. The funeral proceeds without Ava and her husband and ends without a hitch. We finish the memorial service and return home with Mom and my husband, just as Ava and her husband arrive in a taxi. Hey, Dad is finally gone. That's the first thing she says after not seeing us for about 10 years. Mom starts to cry at her words, and I'm just dumbfounded. I leave a sobbing Mom with my husband and sit down with Ava and her husband to talk. Got anything to drink? I'm thirsty. My brother-in-law immediately asks. My brother-in-law is actually 7 years older than me, so it feels a bit odd. Haven't seen this guy in about a decade. What are these two thinking? Even though I feel uncomfortable, I serve them coffee. They begin talking without even glancing at Dad's altar. So, what's the inheritance look like? What's our share? They ask eagerly. At this point, I call in Mom, my husband, and another man who was waiting in the next room. Ava and her husband are puzzled by the stranger until he hands them his business card, silencing them.
Nice to meet you. I'm the lawyer who drafted your father's will. According to it, all assets will be divided equally between your mother and Grace. Ava will receive nothing, including any legal inheritance.
The lawyer announces. Ava and her husband slam the table and stand up. What? Why is there no inheritance for me? Ava is wailing and screaming. However, the lawyer calmly pulls something out.
Don't remember. Listen to this.
The lawyer hits play on the voice recorder, and a torrent of awful words from Ava to Dad fills the room. Neither Mom nor I had ever heard anything like it, leaving us stunned. The message went, I wish you'd just die already. The longer you live, the worse off we are. If you're gone, we get the money. It's a torrent of unbearable abuse. Despite never visiting him in the hospital, she's been leaving these kinds of messages on his voicemail daily. Upon hearing this, Mom was devastated. I couldn't hold back my anger. You said these things to Dad, who was battling his illness? That's not human. But they didn't even give us a wedding gift. They owe us this much at least. Ava retorted, bringing up past grievances. I wanted to respond, but the lawyer intervened.
This is sufficient evidence to disinherit her. Your father had already made the appropriate arrangements before his death. It can't be undone.
Realizing she'd lost her inheritance due to her own actions, Ava began to profusely apologize to Mom and me. Even though my brother-in-law said,
What are you doing? This is embarrassing.
Ava brushed him off. Mom, Grace, please, she begged. What? I glared at Ava. Please, we bought a luxury condo thinking we'd get Dad's inheritance. We can't pay for it without the inheritance, she wailed. Even the brother-in-law adjusted his posture and began apologizing deeply, but Mom and I ignored them. If you won't leave, I'll call the police. You're no longer family after what you said to Dad, we told them. That got them to leave, crying. 3 days later, I couldn't leave Mom alone and was working at my childhood home. Just then, Ava and her husband stormed in. They walked right in through the front door, yelling and making a scene. Hey, because of you, Grace, both my husband and I got fired. What are you going to do about it? Hand over the inheritance. Confused, I asked, What? What are you talking about? How is this my fault? Ava replied, You told people we went on a trip during the funeral, remember? Our boss found out and fired us. We took leave for Dad's funeral, and then you tell everyone we're on vacation? Actually, I was acquainted with their boss. When he mentioned that they were missing, I honestly told him they weren't coming. Yeah, your boss asked me where you guys were. I told him you went on a trip. I replied casually, and Ava fumed. If we don't get any inheritance, how are we supposed to pay for our apartment? You took our jobs too. What's wrong with you? Eventually, they began searching around the house for anything valuable to take. That's when I called the police. In a frenzy, the two of them searched the whole house, completely unaware that a police patrol car has arrived. The police get out of the patrol car and take them away on suspicion of theft. Later on, they were released as if it was attempted theft, but they couldn't afford their high-rise apartment anymore and got kicked out. When they tried to sell it, they learned its value had dropped significantly, possibly due to the damage they caused, scratches on the walls, scuff marks on the floors. Turns out my husband is in real estate, and this has become talk among his colleagues. It's likely the talk is about Ava and her husband. I have no idea how they're getting by now, and I honestly don't want to be involved anymore. Mom had initially wanted to continue living in our old home, but considering Ava and her husband might barge in again, we decided it was better for her to move in with us. However, Mom wanted to keep the family home, so we're renting it out to someone we trust. From now on, it'll just be me, my husband, and Mom, living our lives happily ever after.